Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to crack open the code that basically runs our entire economic world. We're talking about the fundamental rules that explain everything from why your coffee costs what it does, all the way up to why some nations are rich and others are poor. So, how does it all work? Let's dive in.
So what could choosing your career path and a government just printing a bunch of money possibly have in common? I know it seems like a totally random question, right? But believe it or not, the answer connects these two seemingly unrelated things because they're both playing by the exact same set of core rules.
And this right here, this is our roadmap for the day. This one image lays out all 10 of those principles, and we're going to use that as our guide to really make sense of the economic world around us. We're going to break this whole thing down, piece by piece, starting with the choices you make every single day. So let's start at the most fundamental level there is, you. See, economics isn't just about stocks and charts and big data. At its very heart, it's about choices. These first 4 principles we're about to cover, they explain the invisible thought process that happens every single time you have to make a decision. You've definitely heard the saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, that's principle 1 in a nutshell. It all comes down to one simple fact: scarcity. To get more of one thing, you have to give up something else. So to get more time for studying, you inherently have to give up that leisure time. Every single hour you spend hitting the books is an hour you can't spend relaxing. That's the trade-off. Okay, so if every choice is a trade-off, how do we actually, measure the cost? Well, that brings us right to principle 2, opportunity cost. The cost of going to university isn't just the tuition and the books. It's also the full-time salary you're not earning while you're in class. That's the real kicker. The true cost of anything is what you had to give up to get it. Most of our decisions in life aren't these huge all-or-nothing moments. I mean, think about it. You rarely decide between, say, fasting for a week or eating an entire buffet, right? No, you think about having one more slice of pizza. That's thinking at the margin. Businesses do this all the time. An airline with empty seats doesn't ask, should we fly this plane? It asks, is the money from one more ticket worth the tiny extra cost? Life's decisions are made in these small, incremental adjustments. All right, this next one. It's a huge driver of, pretty much everything we do. Incentives. An incentive is simply something that makes you act. Look at what's happening here. When the price is high, the shopper is thinking twice. But when that price drops, she's eagerly filling her cart. That is a direct, clear response to an incentive. It's almost automatic. We're constantly weighing these things in our head. Okay, so those first 4 principles really nail down how we make decisions as individuals. But here's the thing. We don't live on an island, right? Our choices affect other people, and their choices affect us. So let's shift gears and move from me to we and explore how we all interact in an economy. And this is where it starts to get really interesting. We often think about countries competing against each other, like it's a zero-sum game. But Principle 5 shows us something different. Instead of everyone trying to do everything, it's better to specialize. So country A is great at growing wheat. Country B is a pro at making textiles. By focusing on what they do best and then trading, they both end up with more stuff than if they tried to do it all themselves. It's a win-win. This classic quote from Adam Smith leads us straight to Principle 6. Markets are a really powerful way to organize economic activity. It's this idea of the invisible hand. The butcher, the baker, they aren't working to feed you out of the goodness of their hearts. They're working for their own self-interest. And yet somehow, the result of all these people just looking out for themselves is a system that works pretty darn well, as if an invisible hand were guiding it all. But that invisible hand isn't perfect. Sometimes it fumbles. We call that a market failure, and it's why governments sometimes need to step in. A classic example is pollution. A factory just doing its thing might pollute the air. That creates a cost for everyone else that isn't reflected in their product's price. In cases like that, that's where a government might step in with rules to try and clean things up for everyone. So we've gone from your own decisions to how we all interact. All right, let's zoom out, way out, to the big picture. How does this whole machine, the entire economy, actually work? Well, these last 3 principles are the heavy hitters. They explain the massive forces that shape entire countries. Ever wonder why some countries are incredibly wealthy while others struggle? Well, according to Principle 8, the answer is surprisingly simple: productivity. It's all about how much stuff can be produced for each hour of a worker's time. You can see the difference pretty clearly. The country with high productivity has way more and a much higher standard of living. It's pretty staggering.
but almost all the differences you see in living standards boil down to that one word: productivity.
And that brings us to the dreaded I word, inflation. So what's the deal with it? Well, in almost every single case of large or persistent inflation, the culprit is just too much money. When a government prints tons of money, the value of each dollar falls. Think of it this way. You have way more money chasing the same amount of stuff. The only thing that can happen? Prices go up. Way up.
And here we are, our final principle. And it's a real head-scratcher for policymakers. There's often this short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Policies that are designed to fight inflation can, unfortunately, lead to a temporary rise in unemployment. And on the flip side, policies that boost employment can risk making inflation worse. It's this constant, tricky balancing act, and there's no easy answer. So there you have it, all 10 principles. And you can see how it all clicks together, right? It's not 10 random rules. They build on each other, starting with you and your decisions, expanding out to how we all interact, and then finally scaling up to explain the whole system we live in. So what's the big takeaway here? The most important thing to remember is that these principles aren't just some abstract theory. They're really a practical toolkit, a lens you can use to make sense of the world, from the big headlines you read in the news to the small choices you make about your own career. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on as you go about your day. Now that you know the rules of the game, which of these principles do you see playing out the most in your world? Is it the trade-offs you make every day, the incentives you respond to, or those bigger economic forces? Understanding these rules is the first step to truly understanding our world. Thanks so much for joining me.